Do you believe in nature's miracles? Deep in the wild forests of Canada, a desperate mother bear loses her cub. But just when everything seems lost, something extraordinary happens. A young girl, driven by courage and compassion, does the unthinkable and changes the fate of a wildlife forever. This is not just a story about animals. It is a journey about instinct, connection, and the quiet power of empathy between species. Get ready to feel every detail, every twist, and every heartbeat of this real and touching adventure in the forests of Whistler. Do not miss a single moment of this wild miracle. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on notifications, because the most powerful and emotional stories from the natural world are right here. A sanctuary of ancient pine trees, snow-covered mountains, and lakes that reflect the sky. The breeze carries the fresh scent of damp earth. The forest wakes up with pure, natural sounds, the distant call of a raven, the soft rustling of leaves, and the light steps of a deer weaving through the trees. Out here, where humans rarely set foot, balance reigns. Gray wolves communicate with long, deep howls. Moose walk with steady grace along paths carved by melting snow. And in a quiet clearing blanketed with thick moss, a brown bear lies with her newborn cub. Her name is Coda, a mother with sharp eyes and a wild soul. Beside her, her tiny cub squirms and lets out soft noises, its fur still silky, its breath as light as air. Soft, reflective narration in this vast Canadian forest, where every creature moves to the rhythm of the land and time itself. There is a love as powerful as any human bond. The love of a mother for her child. Coda gently licks the cub's nose, and the cub responds with a happy little sound. Her eyes lift toward the horizon, instinctive, protective, always alert. The sun begins to rise, and the forest comes alive. Birds sing in harmony, squirrels race through the branches, and a kind of magical peace settles over everything. But hidden beneath the beauty and harmony, something is drawing near, something quiet, unseen. Yet it will change the fate of this peaceful clearing forever, because even paradise has its shadows, and nature, as beautiful as it is also unpredictable. The morning shone golden over the Whistler forest, as if nature itself was celebrating another day of life. Coda, the brown bear, moved slowly alongside her cub, who was taking his first wobbly steps outside their hidden clearing. Every new sound was a whole world to him. The snap of a twig, the quick glide of a bird, the shimmering reflection of a stream. Coda stayed close, alert to any change in the air, yet allowing her little one the space to explore. Everything felt in perfect balance, until it wasn't. A sudden noise, like a mechanical thunderclap, ripped through the birdsong and shattered the forest's peace. It was something human, maybe a low-flying helicopter or off-road vehicles tearing down an illegal trail. The sound echoed across the mountains, shaking branches and sending animals scattering in a ripple of panic. Coda rose at once, the fur along her neck bristling, eyes wide. The cub, startled, stumbled away, running with no direction. His instincts were still new, his body too small to understand fear, only to feel it. Graw! Her roar rang out, sharp and fierce, calling him back, but it was already too late. Within seconds, he vanished into thick underbrush, heading toward a place she could not follow fast enough. The engines faded into the distance, but the damage had already been done. Silence returned, but it was no longer peaceful, it was heavy with fear. Coda ran. Her massive paws hit the earth like thunder. She sniffed the air, searched for tracks, listened to the ground itself. She climbed down steep slopes, leapt over fallen trees, crossed an icy stream, ignoring exhaustion, ignoring fear. The forest, once so familiar, now felt like a threat. Every shadow could be hiding what she feared most, that her cub was hurt, or worse, taken. She knew humans. They were unpredictable. Some brought pain, others just fear, but none could be trusted. Her wild eyes, once calm and steady, now burned with the fire of something primal, the need to protect. She passed claw marks on trees, the scent of other animals, even fresh droppings from a younger bear, but no sign of her cub. Every step pulled her farther from home, and deeper into desperation. Night began to fall, staining the sky a deep blue streaked with fading bands of orange. Coda finally stopped, breathing hard, muzzle caked with dirt. She let out a low sound, somewhere between a growl and a moan, as she turned in all directions, searching. The fierce mother who once moved through the forest with pride was now all fear in motion, but she could not give up, not while even the faintest hope remained. Still, the forest at night is cruel, and time was her fiercest enemy. She settled beneath an old tree, eyes wide open, body tense and aching. Bears do not cry, but they do feel pain. And that night, the heart of a mother bear beat so loudly with grief and fear, it could have echoed through the trees like a silent scream. Dawn brought a different kind of silence to the Whistler forest. It was not the peaceful kind. It was the kind that comes when something is missing, like a part of the forest's soul had vanished during the night. The sun rose shyly between the tall pine trees, still wrapped in fog, while dewdrops slid down the leaves like quiet tears of the morning. While Coda continued her search, driven by instinct and a flicker of hope, on the other side of the forest, a young human girl was getting ready for what she thought would be just another ordinary morning. Emily, 13 years old, woke up early not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She loved nature with the pure heart of someone who had not yet learned to fear it, only to respect it. Her parents, both wildlife photographers and environmentalists, had moved to a small cabin near the forest a few months ago. Life out here was quiet, but to Emily, it felt like home. She tied her light brown hair into a messy bun, grabbed her digital camera, a gift from her dad, and stepped onto the trail she knew by heart. With a notebook in her backpack and a water flask at her waist, her goal was simple: to photograph animals for her school project on local biodiversity. She walked lightly, almost dancing over dry leaves, jotting down notes about sounds, tracks, textures. Sometimes she would stop for long moments just to observe a squirrel or wait patiently for a deer to come closer. Her connection to that forest was silent, but deep. But that morning, something broke the usual harmony. A muffled sound, almost like a cry, high-pitched, on and off. Emily stopped. Her heart sped up. It was not a bird, and not a big animal. It was something small, fragile, and desperate. Carefully, moving past branches and thorns, she found what she least expected: a brown bear cub, stuck in a tangled mess of thorny bushes. Its fur was bristled, its eyes wide with fear. It was hurt. One of its back legs seemed twisted, and it was breathing heavily. Emily's first instinct was to back away. Her brain screamed, "If there's a cub, the mother must be close." But something in her chest, something louder than fear, refused to let her leave. "Hey, it's okay, little one," she whispered, kneeling down slowly, making sure every movement said, "I'm not going to hurt you." The cub let out a weak whimper, trembling from pain. Emily knew she had to make a decision. There was no one else around, no heavy footsteps, no growls, just the little cub crying and her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She opened her backpack, pulled out a scarf, and tore it into makeshift strips. Without touching the cub directly, she pushed the branches just enough to ease the pressure. The cub flinched, but did not run. Maybe, deep down, it sensed that this skinny girl with gentle eyes meant no harm. She managed to free him. He stumbled as he tried to stand, but quickly collapsed again. Emily opened her water bottle and poured a little into a hollow in a nearby rock, making a tiny pool. The cub, hesitant at first, drank. She watched him, a mix of wonder and worry in her eyes, and then she heard it, rustling, strong, rhythmic. Something big was coming, very big. Her body froze. She knew that sound, the approach of a large animal. But this time, it was different. It felt like the whole forest was holding its breath. Emily looked at the cub, then toward the trail where the sound came from, and she knew the mother was coming. And she was still there, just a few steps away from what any mother bear would see as the most precious thing in the world. Time stopped. The sound grew louder, branches snapped. The forest seemed to tremble under the weight of something big, something that was not just approaching, but charging forward with purpose. Emily was still kneeling beside the cub, holding her breath, her heart pounding like a war drum. Her instinct screamed for her to run, but her legs felt rooted to the ground, held by something stronger than fear. Responsibility. She looked at the cub, now trying to stand. He was shaky, still weak, but his eyes were different now. There was a flicker of hope. Emily knew she was out of time. If she stayed, she risked being attacked. But if she ran, she would leave him vulnerable, unable to defend himself, or even walk on his own. "You're going to be okay, you'll see," she whispered, more to herself than to the cub. She needed to hear her own voice, to believe this was not madness. With slow, deliberate movements, she took off her backpack, opened a side pocket, and pulled out a piece of dried apple. She held it out. The cub hesitated for a second, then took it. That was the sign she needed. He was still alive, still fighting. There was still time. Then she did something unthinkable. She took off her jacket and laid it on the ground like a blanket. Then, with a kind of sacred care, she wrapped the cub in the fabric and gently lifted him into her arms, holding him as if her warmth could take the place of his mother's. In the distance, the noise stopped. Silence. Emily knew what that meant. The bear was no longer rushing in with rage. She was watching now. "You're out there, aren't you?" Emily said quietly, lifting her eyes toward the thick brush. "I don't want to hurt him. I'm just trying to help." The words drifted into the air, but they carried a raw sincerity, almost like they could reach through the trees. Slowly, she walked, the cub in her arms, toward a small clearing nearby, where a spring trickled with pure water. The ground there was soft and open, easy to see from all directions, a perfect place for a safe reunion or a quiet goodbye. She laid the cub down gently, still wrapped in the jacket, then stepped back 3 paces. She stayed on her knees, hands visible, vulnerable, human, present. The cub let out a sharp sound, almost like a call, and that's when she saw her. First the eyes, then the wet snout, and finally the massive shape of Coda emerged from the shadows like a living ghost of the forest. Her body, carved from earth and instinct, towered over the clearing. Her eyes, hard as stone, locked onto Emily, long, unblinking. Emily did not move. Her body trembled, but her gaze did not waver. She knew that the slightest wrong move could be seen as a threat. It was no longer the forest holding its breath. It was the universe. Coda took a step, then another. The ground seemed to shake under her paws. She stopped beside the cub, sniffed him, touched her nose to his fur with delicate care. The cub responded with a soft, happy sound. She licked him once. And then, for the first time, she looked at Emily. Not with anger, not with fear, but with something Emily would never forget. Recognition. There was a wild wisdom in that gaze, as if Coda, through pure instinct, understood that this young human had saved her child, that for some reason beyond understanding she had chosen compassion over self-preservation. Emily stayed still, tears running down her face without her noticing. She was exhausted, terrified, but alive. And deep in her soul, something had shifted forever. With one last look, Coda gently took the cub by the scruff and turned back toward the forest. She vanished into the trees like a shadow melting into dusk. Emily stayed there for a long time, sitting with her hands in her lap, breathing shallow. Then she picked up her dirt-stained jacket, slid her camera back into her backpack, and began walking home. Each step felt lighter, more aware, as if she were no longer walking on the ground, but on some invisible thread that connected her to everything around her. Emily walked along the trail, but her mind was still back in the clearing. Every detail of what had just happened pulsed inside her with overwhelming force. It was not just fear she felt, it was something rare, a sense of wonder, like she had touched something sacred and ancient. Her steps were slow, almost ceremonial. The trees seemed to watch her with invisible eyes. The wind whispered through the branches, as if retelling her story to the entire forest. She had only walked a few minutes when the sound she feared most returned. Leaves rustling deeply, heavy steps approaching. But this time it was different. There was no urgency, no rage. It was a steady rhythm, deliberate. Like a call, Emily froze. Her body went stiff, her heart beating fast again. She felt the instinct to run, but something inside her, maybe the memory of Coda's eyes, told her to stay. She took a deep breath and slowly turned toward the sound. And there she was. The bear, majestic, powerful, stepped through the trees, with her cub trotting beside her. He no longer limped the way he had before. The injury looked less severe now, or maybe, just maybe, his mother's presence was the best medicine of all. Coda stopped a few meters from Emily. It was a safe distance, but close enough that no words were needed. Not in human language, not in growls. Their eyes met, and for a moment that stretched far beyond time, the rest of the world disappeared. Emily did not speak. She simply crouched, lowering herself to the cub's level. The little one looked at her, not with fear, but with memory. She smiled. A small, tender smile, full of quiet emotion, like someone reuniting with an old friend. Coda remained still. Her chest rose and fell slowly. She seemed calm, as if, for the first time, she recognized something in this fragile, two-legged creature that she had never seen before. Empathy. The cub took 2 hesitant steps toward Emily, sniffing the air. He did not come too close, just enough to say, "I remember you. I will always remember you." Then Coda let out a low, rough sound, not threatening, just certain, and the cub returned to her side. She turned away and walked back into the forest, slowly disappearing along the same path from which she had come. She did not look back. She did not need to. What had happened between them was already sealed, written into the earth, the wind, and the memory of both their worlds. Emily stayed there a long time, still kneeling, eyes locked on the place where the forest had swallowed that wild family. There was something divine in that moment, not in a religious sense, but in the very real miracle of connection, something that goes beyond words, beyond species, beyond instinct, a brief bridge between the wild and the human. When she finally returned home, her parents greeted her with a mix of worry and relief, but when she told them what had happened, with the calm of someone who had lived something unexplainable, their eyes filled with tears. They understood what that moment meant. They knew the forest, in all its beauty and brutality, had chosen to share one of its deepest secrets with their daughter. That night, Emily could not sleep. She sat by the window of their cabin, looking out at the dark blanket of forest, hoping to see glowing eyes in the distance. She saw nothing, but she felt something. She felt it in her chest, something you cannot explain. And deep down, she knew the bear would remember too. Because miracles, when they happen in the forest, do not need witnesses. They live on in silence, in instinct, and in the hearts of those brave enough to trust. In the days that followed, something shifted inside Emily. It was not easy to explain, but it was there. A different lightness in her step, a new depth in her eyes. It was as if the forest had left an invisible mark on her soul, as if she had become part of something greater and silent. When she shared her story at school, her classmates listened wide-eyed, barely breathing. Some doubted her. Others were deeply moved. But all of them felt, deep down, that this was not just a story about a girl and a bear cub. It was a story about courage, about instinct, about seeing beyond fear. Her parents, who had spent their lives protecting and documenting nature, were overcome with emotion at the maturity their daughter had shown. They talked at length about the importance of approaching wildlife with respect, and together they decided to turn that experience into a small documentary, not to win awards, but to inspire other children, other families, to see nature as a place of connection, not fear. In the Whistler community, the story of Emily and the bear Coda spread like a modern legend. People spoke of it with admiration and a hint of reverence. Some said it was a miracle. Others called it luck, but the oldest among them knew the truth. The forest does not reveal itself to just anyone. It chooses. One afternoon, weeks later, Emily returned to the trail where it had all happened. She walked alone, as before, but her steps were slower now, more mindful. When she reached the clearing, she knelt down and left a small gift, an apple carefully wrapped in fresh leaves, and a note scribbled in pencil on the corner of a crumpled page. "Thank you for trusting me." She stayed there for a while, feeling the breeze on her skin, listening to the birds and the distant sound of water. Everything was calm. Nothing happened. No animals appeared. And still, she felt a presence. She did not need to see it. She just knew. On a nearby hill, two eyes watched her, quiet, alert. Coda was there, hidden among the trees. Beside her, the cub had grown strong. They did not come closer. They did not growl. They did not flee. They just watched. Emily stood up, looked toward that hill and smiled. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was just imagination. But for a moment, the wind seemed to whisper something she would carry with her for the rest of her life. The forest had accepted her as part of it. And in that brief instant, among ancient trees and deep roots, between two very different species that were never meant to understand each other, something was born that was greater than fear, greater than pain, greater than distance. Respect. And that was how the girl returned home, not as an adventurer who had experienced something rare, but as the quiet keeper of a secret as old as the world itself. Nature speaks. And sometimes, if you listen with your heart, it answers.